Okay, I've got 4 minutes after, so why don't we go ahead and get started. First, welcome to everyone who's out there, and thanks for coming to our first virtual Buffalo Tableau user group event. It's been close to a year and a half since we last met in person at Delaware North, so I appreciate everybody who's RSVP'd and is attending today. Oops, go back a slide. So we're looking to get this group back together and get to maybe like a quarterly cadence of TUG meetings. So myself, Aaron Meisland from Pay Factors, and Marcos Manunta are the committee members for the Buffalo Tableau user group. We'll be meeting after this meeting to start planning for the next meeting. So if you have any questions, suggestions, feedback, you can feel free to reach out to us. All of this information will be recorded and posted to the Tableau community page for the Buffalo Tableau group. So those links are shown here on the slide. Again, this will be recorded and I can send it out after the meeting so you all have this information. I'll stop droning on and go to our agenda here. We have two really great speakers today. First is Joel Hutchison from Tableau, who's going to review new features in Tableau since our last TUG meeting. And then Matthew Campbell, who returns to us. He had presented at a TUG back in, it was September of 2019. He's from RBC Bank in Canada, and he's going to do a session on spring cleaning for your tooltips. So that should be interesting. And then we'll wrap it up. So without further ado, I will let Joel take it away and present his information.
Thanks, Chris. Let me go ahead and share. And just let me know when you guys can see that.
I can see it.
All right, sounds good. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joel Hutchison. I'm a Principal Solutions Engineer with Tableau. And today we're going to be covering what's new. So some of the latest features. I'm going to actually just cover 2020.3 and 2020.4. That leaves out the most recent version, 2021.1, which is only about 3 weeks old. But hey, if you guys are doing this quarterly, be happy to come back next quarter and touch on those topics. So let's go over these. I've actually trimmed down some of the content. I only have a few minutes with you guys, so I tried to filter down to exactly what I thought were some of the key features. All right, so let's start off with 2020.3. As with every release, I like to break these down into the different categories so you can see them here. I'm not going to read over all of these, but we do have new features in desktop, mobile, server, and prep builder. Now to touch on some of the key features with each one of these. First up in desktop, this is what I think are kind of cool features, so hopefully you guys do too. But the first one here is we've added some new syntax for our calculation editor. So if you're familiar with an in statement in SQL, you can now use that directly in your calculation editor. So there you see we're using case statement, and then we have when in, and we just have a comma separated list. You can use it with a comma separated list. You could use it with a set, combined fields, city, state combinations, etc. But a nice new feature to add, or new syntax that's added into that calculation editor. Another nice desktop feature here is the search improvements in the data pane. So I don't know about you, but I have a lot of wide tables, wide data sources where you've got over 100 different fields that you're looking through. And typically I just type in what I'm looking for, but here we have the ability to actually filter on the type of field. So maybe I'm looking for a calculation, a dimension, a measure, or a comment. You can see the syntax there as you use it in the search, but a nice easy way to find those fields on the left-hand side in the data pane and then bring them out into your canvas to start working with. If you guys aren't familiar with relationships, these were added, I believe, back in 2020.2, but we've made some improvements since then. So we've added the ability to create these relationships on calculated fields, concatenated fields, data truncation, and you can also use inequality operators as you create these relationships. Now this is the last desktop feature we have in 2020.3 that I thought I'd call attention to. I think it's a big deal. We have the ability now to export crosstabs directly to Excel. So this is one of the things that a lot of people are asking for. It does preserve, obviously the contents of that cell as well as the formatting as you export out there. From the server, you can also export a crosstab on Tableau server. So a couple new things here as far as how can I take my visualization and export it out, in this case, to Excel. Now on the server side, if you are a server administrator or friends with a server administrator, they're gonna love this one. This is a feature that allows new users who are coming into the server to automatically be granted a site role. So either a viewer, explorer, creator. So nice ability, kind of takes some of the headache away from your administrators, allowing that user to come right in and automatically be assigned a role. Now, as far as end users on the server, we do have this new Shared With Me tab. So you can see it there on the left-hand side. We'll take a look at it here in a moment in our demonstration, but people can start sharing content throughout the organization. You have direct access to it on that left-hand menu, and you can see what other folks in your organization think you should be looking at. And then finally, sorry, wrong way. Finally, the last point here on server is the ability to tag stale content. So we've actually got a view, an admin view that allows us to see, is there content out on my Tableau server that folks just aren't using? You know, it's gone stale. We probably want to clean that up. So this admin view allows us to see that content and actually tag it so we can, clean up our servers and make sure that we only have content that people are actually using. All right, our next category here is prep, and this is a big one. Tableau Prep 2020.3 allows us now to write back to a database. This was the #1 feature that Tableau Prep users were asking for. It's the ability to say, okay, I've got a flow, I've cleaned up my data. I now want to take it back into a database. I might have started in 1 or 2 different databases. In the past, all we had as an option for output was either a hyperfile or a CSV. Now we have, as you can see here, these 7 different databases. So SQL Server, Oracle, Postgres, MySQL, Teradata, Snowflake, and Amazon Redshift. Now the first question I always get is, well, this is great, there's 7. I don't see my database on there. This is just where they're starting with this first release of this feature. They will be adding more databases in here. So this list will grow for sure. And we'll take a look at this as part of our demonstration as well. All right, let's transition now over to 2020.4. And again, I can give you guys these slides. We have a bunch of different pieces of functionality. We'll just touch on the ones that are probably most relevant. So first up in desktop, with our maps, we now support multiple marks layers. So you can have as many different layers for marks as you want. We'll take a look at this as part of the demonstration, and you can come in there and actually hide the ones you don't want to show, or turn them on and off and kind of toggle that. So we have a demonstration with that. This is a little bit of the programmer in me. Again, another feature in our calculation editor. I hope you're as excited as I am, but we have the ability to do block comments. So if you do have a programming background and you have a multi-line comment, as we see here, the syntax is simply to use that /* and then * /, and you can have multiple lines of comments. I think it's important, always good if you have a very complicated calculation, to make sure it's documented so the next person knows what they're looking at. All right, and then there's some connector updates. As you guys all know, Tableau has been acquired by Salesforce. So there's a lot of improvements here as far as how we connect back to Salesforce. So Datorama is a Salesforce product. We have a nice, easy way to connect into that product. The bottom there, we've improved upon our Salesforce connector and made it more efficient. And then in the middle, not related to a Salesforce product, we have improved upon our Snowflake connector and increased our authentication methods there. Now on the server side, and if you've ever listened to me give one of these what's new presentations, we always talk about web authoring enhancements. And the reason is we are trying to take all of that great functionality we have in desktop and we're trying to move it into the browser. So we've been on this journey for quite a while now. In this latest release 2020.4, you can see some more additions, more pieces of functionality that we're gobbling up and putting into the browser. So we're not there yet, but we're getting closer and closer. Here we have the ability now to add highlight actions, mark labels, apply filter to worksheets, create fixed sets, and create extracts. Now, if you're not familiar, there's actually a visualization out there on Tableau Public. It has a side-by-side comparison of all the features that are in desktop and then the features that are in web authoring. So you can kind of compare those. So I always, with every new release, I go back and I visit that viz just to see how close are we to closing the gap completely. And we are getting very, very close. Next up, if you're familiar with Ask Data, we've added some improvements here. So a stacked bar chart is now possible. We have some admin views around Ask Data. And we also have a new date range refinement around when you're working with dates and Ask Data. Our next category is Prep Builder. In Prep Builder, this is a big one. You can now author, edit, etc. your prep flows directly from a browser. So you don't need to have Tableau Prep Builder installed on your machine anymore. You could start and finish a prep flow directly on the browser. So just like we were doing with web authoring, we're trying to gobble up that functionality that desktop has. We've now released Prep Builder fully functional directly to the browser. So very exciting. Now you can work without having to have a desktop install of Prep Builder. All right, so let's jump out of here and actually take a look at some of this. We're going to start over here in Prep Builder. I am on, the version that installs on my personal machine, and we're just going to open up one of these flows that I have here. So I have this flow called Snowflake. Snowflake to, let's see, we're going to put Snowflake to a database. So it's asking me right now to edit my credentials. Hopefully I remember them. Sign in. All right, this should get rid of that. Now we need to specify our warehouse. We're just going to pick a warehouse that we want to work with and a database. And I'll pick out my database here. All right, and then there's little, and then of course a schema will pick public. So now we've connected to two different tables out here on our Snowflake database. We've got this bank loans, and we also have this geographic data about our loans. Now in the past, you'd come to your output after you've cleaned it up, and your options, as I said, were simply a file. You could do a hyperfile or a CSV. We now have a database table in here. So I can click that. It's going to say, okay, let's specify your server. I'm going to go ahead and say, let's do Postgres. And then I have to provide the information about my Postgres instance. So I'll come in here. I've got a cloud-based Postgres. We'll go ahead and provide some information in here about that. Let's see if we can get it all right on the first try. And good thing I can copy and paste because this is quite lengthy. All right, we'll grab this last piece here. And hopefully if everything goes right, we'll sign in. It will say success. It looks like it's did. From here, it's going to say, okay, you've signed into this database. Now, do you want to write to an existing table, or do you want to create a brand new table? So we can just, let's just say, we can give it a name, new Snowflake table, and see right there it says, all right, create a new table. We'll go ahead and say yes. And then we have some options. Do we want to create the table? We're going to say yes. You could also append to an existing table or replace data. That's going to say, okay, the table already exists. We're going to wipe out that data, kind of like a truncate, and then we're going to push in new data. We're just going to do this create table here. And if everything goes well, we're going to go ahead and click that run button. Runs for a few seconds, and this is just going to load up data coming from a Snowflake instance into a cloud-based Postgres instance. So again, that's the new functionality. It looks like we're cranking through about several tens of thousands of rows. Let's see how much it is. I'm not even sure how many rows it is. Hopefully it's done soon. I guess I should have checked how many rows it was. All right, but you guys see, we're able to write back to a database. So brand new functionality as far as 2020.3 and the write back functionality. All right, let's move on from there. And we're actually going to go now into a browser. We'll come back and check on that in a little while. Let me come up here to my browser, and we're going to go into Tableau Online. All right, Tableau Online is just a cloud-based version or a SaaS-based version of Tableau Server. So what I'm going to show you here is no different than if you're working with Tableau Server. This is just my own personal instance of Tableau Online. We're going to start off now, and we're going to come up here into Explore, and I want to call attention to this new button or new option here of Flow. So I can click this, and this allows us now to create a brand new flow, as I was saying, directly from a browser. So we have to give it a little bit of time to load up here, and then we can connect to data. I can either pick a published data source that I already have there on Tableau Server, or any of these other data sources that we might have access to. So I'll just come in here to a Tableau Server. You'll see it gives me all of my published data sources, and I'm going to filter down here into database and files. I'm going to pick that same database we were just looking at a moment ago, that Postgres database. And then it's going to prompt me for my credentials. So we'll go ahead and provide the same ones we just gave a moment ago. And let me make sure my copy and pasting is up to par. And we'll go ahead and paste that in there. All right, and then you see we have our different tables out here. I can start dragging out the tables I want to work with. We got a weather data table here. We're going to go ahead and click that. We'll add a cleaning step real quick. This experience should look exactly like it does on Prep Builder that you run on your own machine. And the reason being is you probably weren't aware of it, but Prep Builder was actually running a little encapsulated browser on your machine. So all the code didn't have to be recoded. We didn't have to rewrite the code. It was already running in a browser on your local machine. We've just ported that over here, and it's now directly in a browser. So just like you can see with, if you were working on your own machine, we now can work in a browser, create those flows. It says publish up here, but we're already on the server, so we're really just saving it back to the server. So that's that new feature, 2020.4, Prep Builder in the browser. I'm going to go ahead and close that. Let's go check on our process back here. And it finished at 2 minutes and 49 seconds. So we were able to load up a database with some brand new data that we brought in from that Snowflake, those two different Snowflake tables. All right, let's jump back here. We'll take a look at some other features real quick. So I mentioned map layers. I'm going to come back home, and we're going to come into this map layers visualization here. And let me just zoom out a little bit. All right, so this is a map, and I apologize for the use case. I don't love it, but this was created by somebody internally, where we have a map layer, as you can see, for a hurricane coming, to attack the East Coast. And then there's these little poblano images where there's a poblano store. And then there's little kind of dog images where there's a puppy shelter. So the way that this use case was written up, hurricanes coming in, we want to rescue a lot of puppies that would otherwise be harmed by the hurricane, but we want to stop for tacos on the way. I don't really love the use case, but it is what it is. Let's take a look at the actual Tableau functionality here. So we have these different map layers. You can see we've got one for Poblana stores, one for puppy shelters, and one for hurricanes. So I can add these different marks on each one of these layers independently. I also have, and I like this ability, I can turn off. So let me say, maybe I want to hide puppy shelters. And go ahead and do that, and you'll notice the puppy shelters disappear from my map. Now I can have as many of these different layers as I want. So maybe as well as puppy shelters, I wanted to find gas stations, which seems a little bit more practical than Poblana stores. I could have those as well. The idea is just to stack up as many different layers as you want and then work with that data. All right, let's go ahead and close that down. And we'll jump over to our next piece of functionality, which is around web authoring. I did want to touch on some of that web authoring functionality. So we're going to go into some of this visualization here. And we'll go into web authoring mode. And I just want to call attention. So I'm going to drag and drop here a couple of points. And as I hover over, you notice we now have this create set. That's a new piece of functionality added to web authoring. So directly from web authoring, we can click on this. We can easily create a fixed set, just like we could in desktop with that little Venn diagram, the concentric circles. It allows us to create the set. Next up, we're still in web authoring here. Let's take a look over here at this region pill. I'm going to use the drop down. And you'll notice we now have apply to worksheets, and I can have these same options I had in desktop. So do I want to apply to all related data sources, this data source, selected worksheets, or only this worksheet? So that's brand new as well as part of our web authoring. All right, let me go back here real quick. And we'll go back home. We'll start a new workbook from here. And I'm going to use my, let me see, where do I want to go? I want to use my data source database, the same one we were using earlier. And we'll just make sure we provide the right password and username. And if I get the right 3 times in a row, I think, hold on. Copying and pasting that little bullet point that I have here. So let me jump back up real quick. And this will be our last example because I do want to leave time for everybody else here. All right. All right, there we go. So that logs us in. Once we're in there, we'll just pick out any table here. Let's go ahead and pick out this inpatient data. We'll drag that out. And you'll notice to the top, I have that extract option. I can actually create an extract now directly from the data source pane. So this is brand new functionality as well. I'm connecting to a live database, but I can create an extract now from the browser from within web authoring. All right, I'm going to stop there just so we make sure we have enough time for the next presenter. So let me go ahead and close this out. And I will go back over here and can't.
Okay. Yeah, thanks so much, Joel. I forgot to mention at the beginning, if people do have questions, there's the Q&A functionality in Zoom. So sorry for not mentioning that, but maybe if you do have questions and just want to enter them in there, we can save a couple minutes at the end and have Matthew or Joel answer any questions that may come up. But I think at this point, Matthew, if you want to take it away and share with us.
Yeah, thanks, Christopher. So good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be back with you, even if it's just virtually. I had very fond memories of joining you back in 2019, and that's really good memory, Chris, just for when I was there with you guys last time. So today, what I want to do is I want to go through a presentation all about tooltips, one of the unsung heroes of Tableau. And I'm going to take you through a few tips on tooltips. But one of the other things I want to do as well, kind of in keeping with the theme of my last presentation, when I did a session on the Canadian election system in Buffalo back in 2019. Today, I wanted to talk about another Canadian institution, which is the Canadian Football League, which is kind of our parallel to the NFL. And so I'm going to be going through a few things today, just a little bit of Canadiana again, and also some tips as well. And we'll just kind of jump into it. So again, just a quick bio on me. So I've been working with Tableau now for 8 years, going back to version 7. I've also been running a user group for RBC's Tableau community within the Royal Bank of Canada for 4 years now. And I've been a Saskatchewan Roughrider fan for 31 years now, going back to our championship win over Hamilton in 1989. And as you can see on the picture there, I usually take my buddy Melvin the Melon with me to the games as well. And as you can see, the fans in Hamilton weren't too impressed, but it was a pretty good touchdown when that picture was taken there. So a couple of things I wanted to share first of all, and this is going to kind of lead into kind of more of the technical things today. If you're not familiar with the CFL, it's been actually, it dates back longer than the NFL, back to the 19th century. Toronto and their team actually is the oldest professional sports team in North America. But just a couple of quick difference highlights here. Unlike the NFL, which has 4 downs, we actually only have 3 downs in our game. And we've got 110 yards or yards of, I should say yards instead of years, yards of field space instead of 100 yards, but our field is wider as well. So the game ends up being much more of a passing game than kind of a running game in the NFL. You know, the NFL will have larger players. We kind of have these speedier players, and I'll give you a couple of examples later on as we go through this as well. Our uprights are actually right at the 0-yard line, at the touchdown line, which makes it really interesting when you get teams going into the red zone. They might be 1st and 6 on the 6-yard line. My team was painfully eliminated from the playoffs in 2019 during the last season we had by having the quarterback throw the ball into the end zone, but having it knock against the upright in the process. Otherwise, we would have won the game and actually gone on to the Grey Cup that year, which was not meant to be, unfortunately. And then, you know, on the upside, there's no Patriots, which is a good thing. On the downside, though, we do have Winnipeg, the Blue Bombers, who are their arch rivals of Saskatchewan in the CFL, and unfortunately, we have to suffer with them over in Winnipeg. And then a fun fact I wanted to share as well is that Baltimore, as part of a short-lived U.S. expansion, actually won the Canadian Championship back in 1995. And there's a whole story I won't go into here today, but if you're interested in kind of football history, this is related to the fact that they lost the Baltimore team at that time in the NFL. And so they got a CFL team instead. They called it the Stallions for a while, but there was also some legal issues as well over what name that they could use as well in the league. So for a while, they were known as the Baltimore CFLers for a little bit there. And then just a couple of other things I'll quickly show as well is during the Grey Cup championship game, the equivalent of the Super Bowl, the Mounties actually bring the Grey Cup onto the field. They bring it down the staircase in the stadium, and they're in their full dress uniform, just like Dudley Do-Right. You know, you see it right there. It's a real event here. We actually have our Prime Minister always or almost always show up to the championship game as well. And then there has been a lot of cross-border work. The NFL and the CFL have actually worked together and collaborated in the past. And 70% of football fans in Canada watch both leagues. And we've had a lot of crossovers, including Doug Flutie, Jeff Garcia, and a number of others as well. So what I'll do today, I'm just going to take you through a fun chart you can always do with sports leagues. It doesn't have to be football necessarily, but it's what I like to do when I'm thinking of doing a football-based visualization. And that is a bump chart here. This is based on the 2019 season. We have the East Division here on the top and then the West Division down below. My Rough Riders here are in the lighter green compared to Edmonton, who is kind of more the limey green up there. But we ended up actually doing pretty well, actually getting the first place by the end of the season. One of the things I'll do just as I'm kind of highlighting through the different boxes here is you'll see if I look at this week right here, which is week 4 in the East, you'll see that Montreal won that week, but the other 3 teams in the East all lost. Right now, the West tends to be stronger of the 2 divisions in the CFL in recent history. But one thing I'll point out is that if you're noticing, it's actually the tooltip is changing color based on whether it's a win or loss. And I have it go green for win and red for loss. And so it's a subtle thing, but how do I do that? Because if you tried to just put that into Tableau just as is, you actually wouldn't be able to do that. There's no kind of if statement or anything that you can put into a tooltip currently that would allow you to be able to do that color change like that. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to do that in a minute. And this is just kind of a very straightforward, basic example of something we can do with tooltips here. But what I'm also going to do as well, if I move over here, I'll just zoom out for a minute. I'm just going to show you this map that I'm putting together here of the CFL as well. So again, we got our 5 Western teams over here from Manitoba going out west. And then we've got all the Eastern teams over in Ontario and Quebec. The Atlantic Schooners, who are now, they've have a history where we've been trying to get the team out in Halifax for over 30 years. And every time that they look like they're ready to go, something happens. They went bankrupt in the 80s. And then they were all ready to go in 2020. And then, of course, 2020 happens. So it's still unknown whether they'll get a team out there. But basically, this is kind of a map of our 9, potentially 10 teams that we'll have in the league when we start up again. But one of the things I'm going to do, I'm just going to give you some fun facts on some of the teams here as well, and make some connections along the way. And then we'll talk a little bit about how I did this with the tooltips here. So starting off, first of all, with Calgary, who's here, the horse. We have a bit of a celebrity in Calgary's history, and that is Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who is most famous, now more of a movie star, but most famous for getting his big break in the WWE. And Dwayne Johnson played in the CFL. He was drafted in, I think, 1994, and you can see him there. That's him in the training camp. But as I'm sure any wrestling fans on the call are familiar with, he's talked about this in the WWE. He got cut very early on in that season, and so it ended his football career completely. He also happens to have dual nationality. He's got family that is originally from Alberta, and I think it is actually Calgary, and also American family members as well. So he actually holds dual Canadian and U.S. citizenship. And more recently, one of the other things, he's kind of hit our radar again because now he's obviously involved with the XFL. And the XFL and the CFL just announced a couple of weeks ago that they're going to have a strategic alliance. So we're not quite sure what this means yet. This could mean that we could actually have interleague play between the 2 nations again, which would be exciting because if you're like me, I'm actually going to be heading down to Texas for school in a few weeks, and it'd be neat to be able to go see my beloved Rough Riders come down to the States again and be able to go see them. But yeah, Dwayne Johnson has a history with the CFL, that goes back now, again, almost 30 years. And it looks like he's going to be playing a role in our league again in the near future. I can't not talk about the Rough Riders. So I wanted to show a few connections, first of all, to Buffalo. And as you can see at the top there, there's two players that are associated with the team just in the last decade. The first one, and I'm not good with names, I'm still getting used to this, but Cyrus Colangio, he just got drafted last year, and I know that he was a Bills player previously. So he's coming up to play with us as soon as things kind of settle down here and we can get the league going again. And then we also have one of my personal favorites, Naaman President Roosevelt. He was one of our star receivers for Saskatchewan between the middle of the last decade. I actually, Saskatchewan made the Eastern Final in Toronto back in I think it was 2017. And I got seats right behind the team and got to sit beside his family who drove up from Buffalo to Toronto to watch him play. So I got to meet the whole family, and it was a great experience. And he's much beloved in Saskatchewan now. So he was one of our better players over the last few years and helped us almost get to another championship about 5 years ago. And then the other thing I'll say about Saskatchewan as well is that we're kind of, it's not a fair parallel, I don't think at least, but we're kind of seen as the Green Bay of the CFL. We're kind of crazy. Instead of wearing cheese, though, on our heads, we actually carve out watermelons, as you can see there. And going back to Melvin in my picture before, watermelons seem to be an association with Saskatchewan. And that goes back to the fact that we've adopted the green and white coloring. And so the helmets look like watermelons. So now people have, as you can see in the bottom corner there, people have gone a bit eccentric with putting together different watermelon creations. And I've seen a good share of that over the years. And then finally, last but not least, I have to put in a picture of Gainer the Gopher, who's our mascot. There's a bit of more to come on him in a bit, though, because he's had a bit of a scandal recently. So I'll leave that for a bit. What I'm going to do now, I'm just going to zoom into Ontario here, kind of getting closer to home for all of us here. So we have two teams in Southern Ontario. We have obviously Toronto. Toronto has its own team. Like everything. And one of the things about Toronto is that John Candy, the actor, was a huge Argos fan when he was alive. He actually grew up in the suburb of Toronto and was going to games from the time that he was a kid. And so what happened is the team ran into trouble back in the early 1990s. He got together with Wayne Gretzky and another business partner who ended up actually going to jail for fraud. Because he was involved with the LA Kings, and I'm not going to mention his name here, but it's the same guy that was involved with the fraud with the Kings. He got Candy and Wayne Gretzky, who was at the peak of his career at that point, together, and they all bought the Toronto Argos. And then some of the things that they did that raised a few eyebrows is that there was a young player coming out of college at that point who got the nickname Rocket Ishmael, and he was the #1 draft pick in 1991. He was expected to be the choice pick of any number of NFL teams. Because Candy and Gretzky had a business conglomerate that had a lot of money between them, they basically overpriced the market and went and bought him. And so he came up to Toronto for a year, and he helped Toronto win the Grey Cup that year. And, it was a blowout. I think they actually ended up almost going, they didn't win every single game, but I think they only lost 1 or 2 that season. And so he did quite well for the team. And, it was great for John Candy again, because he was really passionate about the Argos. He would actually get all his Hollywood buddies to come in to do the halftime show. So he had the Blues Brothers play at halftime and during one of the games. And so he's kind of the #1 Argo fan still to this day in the city of Toronto. And unfortunately, I think he'd be a bit sad to see that the team's been struggling recently, where they haven't been able to get the fans out since he was owning it. And then last but not least, I'll talk about where I grew up in Hamilton, which is just down the road here. And one of the fun things, if you go back through the history of the CFL and the NFL, is that there was interleague play between the two leagues. And the only time that Buffalo's played against a Canadian team was against Hamilton. And that was back in 1962. And you can see I've got a card cut out there from the Montreal Gazette that you can find on Google. It kind of gives a little bit of details on the details of the game there. But yes, there was a time that Buffalo played against Hamilton, and unfortunately for Buffalo lost that game. That was at the time when Hamilton was really a powerhouse in the league. They had a very good decade in the 1960s and won a number of Grey Cups that during that 10-year period. It's kind of seen as now the golden age for the team in retrospect, because they currently have the longest drought right now in the league, having gone over 20 years without having won a Grey Cup. So a lot of the Hamiltonians that cheer for the Ticats now look back very fondly on that era. So that's just kind of a quick summary here that I wanted to give, just kind of a little bit about the CFL. And again, I'll go into some other fun facts just to close it out here, including what exactly is going on with Gainer these days. But what I wanted to spend the rest of the time here in the presentation doing is just give you guys a little bit of a kind of a taste of what we did to get some of these dynamic tooltips in place. And I'm going to go back to my facts here, because as you can see, this was a very crowded dashboard, and it was done by design that way, because sometimes you have a lot of information you want to share. I'm excited to share everything that's going on with the CFL with you guys here in the Buffalo Tableau user group, but sometimes too much information is not good. So how do we deal with that? And since Tableau was introduced visual tooltips a few years ago, I've been using that more and more for visualizations, where you can put in things like bump charts, for example. You can put in trend graphs, and I use that very effectively. In fact, in one of my work reports, I have a dashboard that will show different ledger accounts and show different visualizations based on what kind of account it is. This example here with the bump charts, though, with the colors changing based on a win or a loss, is pretty straightforward to do, and you can do it right away. In Tableau, it doesn't take much work at all. And that is, you just basically have to set up 2 calculated fields. to show whether it's a win or a loss. And so you can see here, I just put them side by side. So, and I color the win results green and then the loss result as red. And you put them side by side. And if you're making sure that if the team wins, that the loss result will show null, it'll just hide it away. You won't even see it in the tooltip. And vice versa with the loss result, you can make that so that it's a loss and that the win goes to null, and then it won't show that as well. And just to show you how that looks here, just bring up lost results so you can see it's the same formula. It's just changing the wording around. So you just say if the result, which is calculated in this case off of a level of detail I did behind the scenes. If you just show that as loss, and then else, you don't have to put else null in. Tableau will default to null, but I'm just typing that out for illustration point here to say that, if you just make sure that if it's not a loss in this case, that it just shows null, that'll just kind of make it empty memory, and then nothing will show in the tooltip. And that's how we get this nice little feature where you actually, it looks like the same tooltip, but it's actually two different values together. So I'm just moving the zoom boxes around. Sorry for that. So then the other features, if you want to get a little bit fancier now with the fun facts map that I've got here, that takes a little bit more work, but again, a little bit more work is very rewarding. And so don't be scared. What I'm going to show you in the tooltip is a lot of tooltips because I did this for all the different teams here. But I color coded them by the team just to make it a little easier to read. So I'll bring that up so you can see that. So what I've got here is, about half a dozen sheets here. And so what you can see, for example, I've got in the purple here, I've got the Dwayne Johnson tooltip in Calgary. And again, it's the same thing. If I go into this, sheet right here, and I'll just unhide it so you guys can all see that. Give it a second. There we are. So if I go into his sheet here, there he is again. What I did purposely this time is I put a context filter in that's filtered the city right on Calgary. And then I'm using ID, every city in my little table, my geography table here has an ID. So I'm using that as my tooltip filter, so it'll only filter on Calgary. And so what that'll mean is since the city is not Calgary, when I hover over Toronto or Vancouver or Edmonton, it just won't show anything. I won't show Mr. Johnson here on the sheet. But for when it does hit Calgary, this will make sure that it goes through. And the same thing as well, if I go over to the Saskatchewan sheets as well, you can see that same thing. I now set the sheets to Saskatchewan. I got a little fancier with this one. I just put in, you can put in any measure values. I like to borrow fields and use them for things they're not supposed to be used for. But to get two sheets right beside each other, I just took two random measures that I had in here. I don't even care about density or population right now. But I put them side by side, put the measure values pill up in the columns menu. And then as you can see, if I took population out, then name and Roosevelt, oh, sorry, I think I did that wrong here. Let me just bring that back. Okay, so it's now changing it around here as soon as I get the article, but it's based on the measure values here that is coming in for these two sheets here. And that way I can put them side by side and have another sheet in that tooltip. And because it's only filtered again on Saskatchewan, it's only going to show this on the Saskatchewan box in my map. And so on we go. I had three tooltips that I did for the Buffalo versus Hamilton logos. So you can see there's the Bills logo right there. And again, I've got that filtered on Hamilton. And then I put two more here. I put a Hamilton Tiger Cats logo right there. And then finally, it got the newspaper article all put together, right, along with the verses here, the little verses sign. If I go right back in, sorry, I just gotta move some boxes around here that you guys aren't seeing. So that just comes in right in this section right here, right? So I got the gold for Hamilton. I've got this versus sheet that I think has kind of disappeared on me. Maybe it's just kind of further down here. And I'll show you, this is just text. Oh, there it is right there, right? So this versus has the score here, and this is just text that I put into the text mark in this case. But I'm kind of blending it all together. And then when I put my Vision Tooltip feature together here, I just kind of put them side by side, and they're all going to stack together and give us the final presentation that you're seeing in the visualization when I hover over it. Like, there, like so. All right, so it's not too hard to do. It does require a little bit of playing around. Admittedly, you can see I've still got the view is too large item there. I was going to make a joke about the rock being too large for his tooltip, but basically you can kind of play around with this and get a whole bunch of content into different views, and that way, as you see, like I've got a newspaper article here with Hamilton. I've got a whole bunch of pictures with Saskatchewan and with Toronto, and then I've just got a little something for Dwayne Johnson here as well. So it's dynamic. It can change around as you go along. And this is great. Again, in my work example, I've got it so that, for expenses, I want to have a 13-month line chart to show just kind of a rolling 13-month trend. But for my revenue, I want to see a breakdown by revenue streams instead. So this is the way I can toggle it, where if I'm looking at a revenue account, I can say, show this sheet with all the breakdown. And if I'm showing an expense account, it'll filter on the tooltip, again, using the filter here. If you're not familiar with it, there's just a little filter script that you put in. You put the dimension that you want to have it filter on. You can then put it on expense and have it use the 13-line graph as well. So a bit fancy, but again, it cleans a lot of stuff up. That way I don't have to have all the space or kind of come up with the dashboard. You can do, actions as well, where you can hover over a part of the map and have the, box here on the right that has the actions. This way though, it's a little bit cleaner, and you're not having to show all this information all at once, and you're saving yourself precious real estate in case you want to put other items on your dashboard as well. I'll just hide those again so that we're all kind of covered up here. And it's not going to go there. So the Gainer epilogue. So what's controversy with Gainer right now? Basically, it's not safe to come to Canada because they redesigned Gainer back in 2019. They have given him new eyes now. This got a lot of controversy in Saskatchewan. There was actually quite an uproar because, as you probably noticed, he looks really creepy in this photo. And so they've actually kind of dimmed his eyes a bit. I think they gave him, they made a joke about him taking out his green contact lenses. But he was scaring kids at the stadium when they revealed him during the first week of this 2019 season. And again, compared to our lovable Gainer, who I prefer personally, it just wasn't the same. So there's still some chatter in Saskatchewan about how we need to Gainer got kidnapped by some crazed mascot, and we need to get him back somehow. And so just a couple of last things I'll share is one other thing. CBS News ran something a few years ago on April 1st, so take that for what it's worth, that the Bills were going to play against the CFL. Again, in this case, it would be the Toronto Argonauts. And if you go into the article a bit, I think this is just a webpage here, should be, or maybe I did it as an image. But there was a whole bunch of people tweeting out saying, this would be great to have a game against the Bills. When can we do this? And so people were really excited. I think they had announced it for the end of May, and alas, it never came to be. Apparently there's some legal issues now with being able to do that, notwithstanding the COVID situation. But it would be great to have interleague play again. I think it would be a lot of fun to have the two teams play again. If we go through the QEW and the I-190 corridor here. And then last but not least, if you're really now excited about football and you're a little annoyed at me for bringing up football because the NFL is still a few months away, a couple of things. First of all, you should be able to get access on the CFL's website, which is cfl.ca. They uploaded for free all of the previous championship Grey Cup games going right back to the 1940s. And so if you're looking to watch some football, it's really good content. And you can kind of scroll there. Again, my personal favorite is the day that I became a Rough Rider fan was the 1989 Grey Cup in the newly christened Sky Dome, where the Blue Jays play, notwithstanding last year where we're able to lend them over to you guys in Buffalo. But Saskatchewan beat Hamilton in a bit of an intense back and forth game there back in 1989. But you can keep on going through the whole history of the Grey Cup is on here now. You can see all the different teams that have played here, and as you can see, we've got some fun ones as well, where there have been snowballs and fog bowls and mud bowls over the years as they become known, and it's great content there. And if you're looking for more football, again, we're still kind of in the air as far as whether the season is going to be coming for 2021 yet. But if it does start, our preseason starts a little bit earlier than the NFL. It'll start in the end of May, beginning of June. and then we run through until the end of November when the Grey Cup is played. And so if you're looking for a football fix, this is just another way that you should be able to get it. So I'll end it off there. I think we've still got enough time now for any questions, and I'll turn it back over to you, Christopher.
Yeah, thanks so much, Matthew. Your presentations are always enjoyable. We learn not just about Tableau, but interesting facts and whatnot about our wonderful neighbors to the north. So always appreciate it. Like I had mentioned between the presentations, if anybody does have questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A. We'll give it a minute or so here to see if anybody has questions. I don't see any in there now. And then again, for those who might have joined a couple minutes after we started, all the content that was here today is being recorded, and Tableau will have it posted on our Tableau community page for the Buffalo Tableau user group. So watch for that there. I think they'll send out an announcement or something as well when that content is posted. And then we'll look to kind of get these meetings going on a regular cadence again, once a quarter or so. So again, be on the lookout for additional information in the coming months. So yeah, I don't see anything in the Q&A, so I think we can probably wrap it there. Again, thanks so much to Matthew and Joel for agreeing to be our presenters for this first tug in a year and a half or so. Thanks to Christine Lilly, who's helped me out quite a bit with this, as well as Aaron Meislin and Marcos Minuta, who are on the Buffalo Tug Committee, and also Alyssa Jensen from Tableau, who's been instrumental in getting this set up for us and figuring out all the our splash page and RSVPs and all that sort of stuff. So many thanks to all, and we'll look forward to seeing you in a couple months here. So thanks, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.